Virginia to the classroom at UNC Chapel Hill, Dr. Deborah Stroman has it all covered. Now this professor and sports business entrepreneur is about to take you to school. It's time for Dishing It Up with Dr. Stroman and the Sports Shop on Buzz Sports Radio.
D. Stroman.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Stroman.
How are you?
Doing
Doing
great.
well.
How are you?
Doing well.
I'm doing well. I was going to talk about, and maybe I'm a little bitter from the Sixers losing to the Knicks, but the pros and cons of calling out referees for missing calls and bias.
Okay.
Listening to my friend Wahoo, Coach Rick Carlisle, in his press conference talking about the unbelievable amount of calls that went against the Pacers. And inside TNT discussing whether or not that's good for a coach to do it, because all the great coaches do it to try to get that favor, or is it best to keep your mouth shut and just keep playing?
Well, it didn't work for Denver.
I don't know if it was the calls there. Minnesota's just running through them.
Right.
But I want to go to a bigger topic, a much bigger topic. And it definitely has been in the news, the House case versus the NCAA. You might be starting to hear more about this. Mm-hmm. The plaintiff, and it's named after Grant House, a former Arizona State swimmer, and football player Tamir Oliver, and TCU basketball player Sedona Prince. We are at a crossroads with college sports. Will it actually blow up right now? Judge Claudia Wilkins, who had 2 previous cases against the NCAA and won, in the sense that she ruled against them. She knows the NCAA. She knows the players. She's got the facts. She's going to determine whether or not a few plaintiffs or thousands of them could potentially receive damages. It's basically about 15,000 college athletes who say that they were prohibited from college revenues, in particular NIL, broadcast deals, marketing sponsorship deals, video games, apparel money, as in the NCAA conspired to fix prices in violation of the Sherman antitrust laws, which we've talked about.
Wow.
That is, you get rich off of us unjustly. No other sector in the United States is there a situation where wages are set at zero and you have price fixing going on like the NCAA. So this is an extension of the Alston case in 2021. That's why we have NIL now, name, image, and likeness, because the Supreme Court ruled unanimously, 9-0, that athletes have the right to earn money off their abilities. And you can get compensated beyond just educational-related expenses. And so the NCAA is now on the hook. They have to prove that preserving amateurism is essential to having college sports and keeping fans interested. Now, just that in itself we know is not true, because people have been engaged in sports, buying apparel, going to the games, paying for stuff since 2021, since we've had NIL. So players being paid does not taint interest. That's what they're saying. So the NCAA, you might have read, they've been jockeying, trying to get an exemption by Congress, as in we don't have to follow the Sherman antitrust laws, right? This won't happen, though. Congress won't do anything without, as in passing something, without the athletes being able to negotiate, as in collective bargaining. Does this sound like pro sports? Absolutely. That's where we're going. The other question is, will they even rule in an election year? Right? There's a lot of politics going on right now. And do you want to be on the side of favoring athletes during an election year? So what do they want? They want current and back pay back to the 2016 season. NCAA says it's going to lose somewhere near $4 billion. We're going to have to cut our non-revenue sports. It's going to cost schools. The estimates now are $20 to $30 million per year. Some people say, well, that's not even enough, because pro sports, you know, it's pretty much a 50-50 split with the revenues. But in college sports, they're saying about, 10 to 15%? Colleges are saying we're going to have to lay off people. Some models say, well, let's make the athletes like independent contractors, but then you lose control of them. If you require players to play in games, even games in the postseason, that sounds like employees. So it is bubbling up. The big court case is scheduled for January 27th, 2025. Some people say the ruling will happen before then, whether the National Labor Relations Board will step in or the NCAA will settle. The other two aspects that are really big in this is racial justice. Obviously, we all know the majority of revenue-producing sport athletes are brown and black. And then we've got Title IX implications. The NCAA says if they lose this case, the damages will go disproportionately to the men. So a lot here to unpack, but just stay close attention because this could all happen within the next month or two this year. And then we're going to see college sports blow up. And a lot of our friends may lose jobs, but that's where we are.
So we're talking with Dr. Deborah Stroman on Dishin It Up with D. Stro. We're talking about the NCAA case that I have to be honest, Dr. Stroman. The more we talk about this, we're going on 4 years now, really having conversations about, revenue and money associated with, the NCAA and in sports, big time college sports, and where the money's going, who deserves to get the money, who deserves to get the credit, et cetera, et cetera. But I guess I don't understand the angst of what is so bad where it is clear that they're employees. It is clear that the employees ask to be justly compensated for their efforts. That it seems to be like it's like climbing Mount Everest to just admit just that fact.
It usually boils down to money. If the athletes are considered employees, then they get workers' compensation, they get benefits, and that means the NCAA, as in member institutions, will have to pay, and nobody wants to pay.
So here's a question, right? They get compensation, they get benefits, they get compensation, all of these things. You go out and you tear your ACL, right? And I'm thinking about a young man that was played at the end of the year. And quite honestly, he may not get an opportunity. He didn't get drafted, and he may not get an opportunity to play in the NFL because of that, right? Because of the injury. And there is zero compensation for this young man as a result of that. If you go and you work for a company and you get injured and you are no longer employable, you get compensated for that, right? So why is the NCAA in college sports, why are they exempt from that type of responsibility?
Well, again, it wasn't always that way.
Right.
But I want to say back in the 50s, the NCAA ruled that it's better to call them student athletes. They consciously put that word in front of athletes so that they could indeed avoid paying athletes in terms of injuries. Like they didn't want to have any liability. So that's why we have some athletes, myself, when I first went to Virginia, it was about financial aid. Athletic department is not going to pay that bill. If people get hurt, well, where's your insurance policy? Well, you better get it from your parents, right? Or you have a student insurance policy that you can purchase. The idea is stay away from paying extra dollars for your labor force.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Wow.
Amazing.
I really hate the fact that, I understand where the case is coming from, but that the impact of that would mean so many people losing their jobs or like she was talking about getting laid off.
Well, I don't understand
things
that.
like that.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, talk to that, Dr. Stroman. That caught my attention too when you said that.
Well, if you think about these athletic department budgets,
right.
So your Power 6 schools who have very good football, you're talking about a budget of anywhere from $150 million to maybe $200 million. And if you're talking about trying to find $20 million to pay athletes, something's got to give. Now, in a socialistic, in a sharing matter. You would say, well, we're going to just tighten our purse strings. The administrators are not going to make, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year. Maybe all of the athletes are not going to get 5 sets of uniforms and unlimited amount of shoes and sneakers. You're going to try and figure out a way. But looking at the history of capitalism, looking at the history of we got to take care of football and men's basketball, they're going to cut jobs. In fact, I still have much angst watching men's college basketball and counting the number of people in sweatsuits and polo shirts versus the athletes. It's at a point now where you might see, 7 or 8 or even 10, versus the amount of players. In fact, one team I counted, there were like 16 people on the bench who weren't athletes.
One per athlete. That's what I always say.
Yeah. So they're going to make cuts. And unfortunately, we know who's going to get cut.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Stroman, we'll see where it takes us, where it goes. But it's amazing that this is all. The one thing that they said it was always about for the student athlete is coming down to be that's what it's about for the institutions.
Yeah, the money.
Mm-hmm.
And let's remember the antitrust, bills, whether it was the Federal Trade Act, whether it was the Sherman or the Clayton, the idea is to protect us.
That's right.
Competition helps consumers by lowering prices. So the NCAA, many people feel it's a cartel, it's a monopoly, they're colluding and all of that. So that's the idea behind this, and now let's apply it to college sports. I'm just hopeful that, again, brighter minds will figure this all out. I don't know if we could ever get a win-win, but athletes not being able to receive revenues from this billion-dollar industry is flat out wrong.
That part. And the fact that you actually could get injured and your likelihood of making money at this moving forward goes away and you get no compensation is just insane to me.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
And everybody's like okay with it. Like, oh well, that's that man. That's the way it comes with the sport.
What have you done for me lately? Mentality.
Really?
You're not able